Single salute. I'm Lord Maitreya, the hip hop futurist. You're now tuned into the Super Longevity Institute podcast. This evening at the Institute, I have a special guest. Born in Venezuela, he currently lives in Spain. He studied at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he obtained his bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering with a minor in economics and languages. His thesis considered a dynamic model of NASA's Freedom Space Station, presently called the International Space Station. Later, he studied international economics and comparative politics at Georgetown University, and then completed a Master's of Business Administration at the Institute of European Administration des Affaires in Fontainebleau, France, where he specialized in finance and globalization. He started his doctorate at MIT, which he continued years later in Tokyo, and received his PhD at the Simon Bolivar University in Venezuela. He worked as a fellow at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization in Vienna, Austria, and later at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C. He worked for several years as an engineer with the French multinational Schellenberger for the largest oil companies in the world. He has been a visiting researcher at the Institute of Developing Economics in Tokyo, Japan, and a professor at different universities around the world. He's the author of The Death of Death. He has collaborated in international media such as BBC, CNN, Discovery Channel, and the History Channel. Ladies and gentlemen, hip-hop futurist, transhumanist worldwide, Dr. Jose Cordeiro. It's a pleasure to meet you. Welcome to the Institute, Doc.
Thank you so much, Lord Maitreya, and it is a pleasure for me to be here with you. I have been also watching many of your interviews, very interesting, very well researched, and covering so many topics, and all of them very interesting. So congratulations, you are doing a very good job disseminating this important knowledge.
Well, you guys are definitely a big inspiration, and I'm glad to have you as a comrade to fight aging, death, and ignorance all around the world, and just helping to do good for humanity. And I'd seen your interviews at the Church of Perpetual Life. It was great. I did some research on you, man. I was like, wow, is it true that you did the last interview with Arthur C. Clarke in Sri Lanka?
Yes, I actually went to visit him in Sri Lanka. Obviously, I didn't know he was going to die, and that is a tragedy, because he believed in the possibility of immortality. And also, he believed in cryonics. So he thought human cryopreservation was possible. And in fact, you can read about that in his books. And so I visited him, and I got a fantastic interview. If you Google for the last interview with Sir Arthur C. Clarke, you can find it out.
That is amazing. I called one of my young cousins Arthur C. Clarke. He loves science fiction. I've been calling him that for like years. And he watches the show, by the way. He's young. They all watch the show. Arthur C. Clarke, for all my hip hoppers who don't know who Arthur C. Clarke is, he was one of the greatest science fiction authors of our time. It's amazing that you got it. I'm glad to have you. All right, you've been a professor all around the world. How did you learn how to? How many different languages do you speak, by the way?
I speak relatively well English. As you can see, I lived several years in the USA, where I studied at MIT in Massachusetts and Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and I worked in California. But outside the USA, I also lived in France, and I speak French. I also speak Portuguese. My brother lives in Sao Paulo, and I also obviously speak my native tongue, Spanish, and I understand Italian, I understand German, and I learned some Chinese and Japanese characters. So I can write a few Chinese and Japanese characters, and I love them. I was 3 years in Tokyo, Japan, and I traveled a lot to China and to South Korea. And in fact, even once to North Korea.
Wow.
I was in North Korea, which is a very isolated country.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. When did you start working at the Singularity Institute? And I mean the Singularity University. I always say Singularity Institute for some reason. Well, when did you start working there? And how did you meet Ray Kurzweil, who was the founder of Singularity University? I don't know why my video seems like I'm lagging. I feel like it's lagging a little bit. Every time I move, I feel like I'm moving in slow motion. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Singularity University was founded by Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis. Yes. Both of them are from MIT. They studied at MIT. Right. Actually, Peter Diamandis was probably 2 years ahead of me, but I did not meet him when I was a student at MIT because we were just students. Probably I was a freshman when he was a junior, but it's a large university, thousands of students. So I did not meet him there, Peter Diamandis. But I actually did go after Ray Kurzweil because he was already famous. So I met Ray Kurzweil, I don't know, 30 years ago, longer, at MIT, and I followed him for a long time. Wow. I mean, his writings, his books, and I went to a couple of his presentations. And then also I learned about Peter Diamandis because of International Space University. Yeah. And so I was also interested in space issues. And when Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil announced Singularity University in 2008, I said, I want to go there. I have to be there. It doesn't matter how. I just have to go. And so I joined the first faculty in 2009. Wow. And I was there during the first 4 years, 2009, 10, 11, and 12. Wow. And then I could also go back for the following 3 to 4 summer programs.
Wow. For all my hip hoppers out there, Will I Am went to Singularity University too. If you know, Ray Kurzweil created the keyboard, the Kurzweil keyboard. He won a Grammy in 2016 for his technological musical instruments.
And so, for Stevie Wonder, yeah. You know that, right?
Yes, I sure do. I love Stevie Wonder.
Yes, yeah. And Ray Kurzweil, very good friend with Stevie Wonder.
Yes, and Peter Diamandis is a great futurist. So he's in really good company. And Singularity University, I want everyone who's listening to please look that up. I really look up to what they're doing at Singularity University, preparing people for future technologies and for things that's going to happen in the future, and try to solve some of the issues we may have in the future, and solving some of our biggest problems. What were you teaching there when you was there? Did they have anything to do with renewable energy?
Absolutely, because that was my area at the time. Well, first of all, I studied at MIT mechanical engineering, and I began working in the energy industry. I was many years working in energy, mostly old energy, fossil fuels. But then in 2009, when I arrived in California, I switched into renewable energy, mostly solar energy, wind energy, and also geothermal energy, because as most people know, California, it's on a seismic fault, and there is a lot of geothermal energy down there, a lot of seismic activity. So that was very interesting, working with renewable energy and also environmental systems, because energy is very related to the energy to the environment. So that was my main area. And in fact, I created a word the energularity, the energy singularity. I created that word in 2009 when we started Singularity University. And I always love to shout, energy, energy.
Yes. You just took. Well, that was gonna be my next question about that, right? So you beat me to the punch. Um, Let me see. Oh, was you a transhumanist or before you before you started teaching at the Singularity University? When did you decide that you know what transhumanist as a philosophical thought is the way I see the world?
Well, first of all, when I was a child, I watched the moon landing, the Apollo moon landing, and I always loved space. But beyond the space, I began learning other technologies. When I arrived at MIT, I read the famous report from the Club of Rome, The Limits to Growth, and that turned me into a futurist because I began worrying about the future, learning more about the future, and also seeing the incredible opportunities. So in the 1990s, there was a lot of intellectual ideas about the future related to transhumanism and extropy, as opposed to entropy. Extropy is good and entropy is bad. So these ideas of transhumanism and extropism were, growing in the 1990s. And this is when I actually became a transhumanist. And then obviously, there were important people, Max Moore talking about that, Natasha Vita-Moore that I have watched in your interviews, and a famous person who unfortunately died in the year 2000, who was called FM 2030. FM 2030 was a visionary, and he was also very optimistic and positive. He was born in Iran or Persia at the time, but then he moved to the USA and he lived in the USA. He pushed for many of these transhumanist ideas, and he had an influence on me and many other people, like Natasha, for example.
Yeah, and myself as well. I have his book, Am I a Transhumanist? I have that book in mint condition. That's one of my prized possessions. And I seen plenty of his interviews. I was like, man, I wish I could have met him because he was here in New York at the new school, and I've taken classes at the new school before, and I was like, dang, if I could have met him while he was still alive. I always think to myself, FM20 was one of the greatest futurists. Really good transhumanist. Please look him up.
And an incredible visionary. So, well, he changed his name, to 2030 because he would be 100 years old in 2030, and he had an incredibly positive vision about the world. I also have 3 of his books in my home, and I love them. They were very short, but very sharp. To the point, and always optimistic, which is important because we have to be positive about the future. This is one of the things I learned from Sir Arthur C. Clarke. He says that many of our ideas become self-fulfilling prophecies. Therefore, if we are positive about the future will most likely be positive. But if we are negative about the future, we will probably be damned.
You know what? I agree with that totally. It's in Buddhism they say your future will be what you think about the most, and that's kind of almost what you're saying. It's almost the same thing. If you're thinking negative thoughts about the future, you definitely probably will manifest that in some way. I definitely agree with that.
Yes,
yeah,
and another thing is that some people say you are the average of your 5 closest friends. So if your friends are positive, active, whatever, you are going to be more or less like them.
Yeah, you're right. You are what company you keep. Yes, definitely. I definitely agree with that. Tell us about your book, The Death of Death, with your coworker, Mr. Wood. Is there an English version of this book?
There will be, not yet.
Okay.
But I am very proud. 3 years ago, with a fantastic British co-author, David Good, we published this truly revolutionary book, which is called The Death of Death in Spanish. This was the first edition, and this one is the second edition. Here you can see second edition.
Yes.
After being a total bestseller, by the way, we are donating all the book royalties, all the dividends to the Sense Research Foundation with Aubrey de Grey in California, who wrote the prologue of the book, and also to another foundation in Spain. But after a Spanish book, total bestseller in Spain and Latin America, we published it in Portuguese. This is in Portuguese. A Morte da Morte in Portuguese.
Whoa. Wow.
Also a bestseller in Brazil and Portugal. And just now, it came out in French.
I love that.
L'amour de l'amour. You can see the French, they have a different style, but it's okay, different
they
style.
both look wonderful. The covers are wonderful. Oh, wow.
Maitreya, next month, it comes out in Russian. And the following month, it comes out in Chinese.
I love that. Everybody's going to be able to read it. That's wonderful. Yes.
And we are working on more editions. Imagine Turkish edition, Italian edition, Japanese edition, Korean edition, German edition, and of course, English edition too.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Congratulations on the success of the death of death. Can you just tell us about it a little bit for my audience who just may be listening to this instead of this episode, instead of having, they probably didn't go back and listen to other episodes, so they probably don't know what transhumanism is about, and why you wrote a book called The Death of Death, and why it would even be possible.
Well, transhumanism basically is humanism with science and technology. This is my own personal definition. Is the traditional good old humanism with science and technology, so that we can transcend the human limitations. We humans have many limitations. Physical limitations, mental limitations, linguistic limitations. Some people speak only Spanish, only English, only Chinese. So we have many limitations. And thanks to technology, we can transcend those limitations. Also, transhumanists talk about 3 super things. Super longevity, like Super Longevity Institute. We talk about super intelligence, and we also normally talk about super happiness or super well-being. More or less a Buddhist idea in a way as well.
Definitely.
So those are our 3 super, or unlimited longevity, unlimited intelligence, and unlimited well-being. And particularly, I'm concentrated on super longevity or unlimited longevity. And that is the idea of the book, The Death of Death, that we can kill death, and we need to kill death before death kills us.
Sounds like a wonderful concept to me. Of course. Sounds like a really ambitious.
And this is moving very fast, very fast. Actually, if you Google chronology of life or the death of death, you will find parts of the book online, especially this chronology, where we talk about future developments based on the ideas of our friend Ray Kurzweil. And normally he talks about 2 dates. The first one is 2029, and the second one is 2045. He says that by 2029, we will reach longevity escape velocity, sometimes also called the Methuselarity. And that means if we make it to 2029 to 2030,
Yes.
we will basically live long enough to live forever. That's wonderful. Live long enough to live forever, but still aging. We are still aging until 2045, when we will have rejuvenation technologies and we will be able to live indefinitely young. Indefinitely young, which is the important thing. We are not going to be indefinitely old. No, no, no. No one wants to be eternally old.
Right.
We want to be eternally or indefinitely young, and this will be possible thanks to rejuvenation technologies by the year 2045.
Wow. When we talk about immortality, we talk about biological immortality, sort of like a jellyfish. We're not talking about the immortality, that the definition of immortality that the Bible or metaphysics is talking about. We also, when we're talking about curing aging and rejuvenation, we're talking about through science and technology. Just wanted to be clear that what the distinction is for the people who are listening, who are just listening for the first time. You know what I want to ask you about? Let me just go back a little bit before I forget. Your thesis for the a model for the the NASA International Space Station. What was that about? And did they use some of the stuff that any of your model of the space station? Like, what was that about? Can you explain the thesis and you know?
Yes, of course. I'm very proud of my work.
Yeah.
And, my thesis at MIT is public. And, you can just Google it in the internet on the MIT database. But my thesis was basically a computer-aided design simulation of the International Space Station. Using a method called finite element method, you can basically digitize all the structure, all the metal structure, and then check how it would behave. How would the dynamic behavior be in case of an asteroid or something hitting the space station? Because this is a real problem in outer space. And there are some internal frequencies, resonance frequencies, that could destroy the space station. So yes, that was a very interesting work, and I am very proud of my work and my time at MIT. But that was a long, long time ago. The world has changed. Even the space station has changed. When I was at MIT, it was President Ronald Reagan. And actually, he created the idea of the station that he called Freedom Space Station. And it really is beautiful, because when the Soviet Union collapsed, then the US government basically said, let's open this to the world and change the name from Freedom Space Station to the International Space Station, which is the current name today. And as you probably know, there are participants from all over the world, from Russia, that was the old enemy, the Soviet Union, from Europe, from Latin America, from the Arab countries. So I am so happy that it changed from the Cold War to a relatively warm peace.
Wow. Thanks for that history. Did you know Marvin Minsky when he was there? Did you ever meet Marvin Minsky?
Absolutely. Yeah, Marvin Minsky was one of my favorite professors. Well, he was a character, a very special character at MIT, very, very famous for different reasons. Also, another one, Noam Chomsky, another very, very famous person. I also visited him. I like to visit famous people. Actually, at the time I was at MIT, also Isaac Asimov was also alive, and he
Whoa.
was a professor across the Charles River in
Wow.
Boston at Boston University.
Mm.
So I also followed Isaac Asimov. But going back to Marvin Minsky, he was truly, truly a genius, and he believed also in immortality
Yes, yes.
and also on cryonics. So when he passed away, unfortunately, about 5 years ago, he was cryopreserved, and right now he is in Alcor Life Extension Foundation in
Wow.
Arizona.
Yeah, respects to him. He's like the founder of AI, the AI lab at MIT.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
he's a top personality. He
yeah.
was the mentor of Ray
Kurzweil.
Kurzweil
Yeah,
and Eric Drexler also. Eric
yeah,
Drexler, the nanotechnology guy,
yeah.
well, they were students of Marvin Minsky, and I also
Minsky.
had the
Yes,
incredible pleasure to meet him. He was very transhumanist as well. Marvin
yes.
Minsky actually went to some of the conferences on transhumanism.
Dang, I wish I could have met him. That's I wish I could have met him. These people around him, I wish I could have. Yeah. I do know of Eric Drexler. He did me a favor recently. Shouts to Eric Drexler. I'm a big fan. I have every one of his books. I have in my library. Every single one. Um, wow. Oh, I know you study finance. Do you think we will adapt a universal income in the future? Do you think that's? Do you think we're heading? What do you think we're heading as far as because I'm seeing a lot of big digital currency in the news, like Bitcoin. It's going up, it's going down, and people are just rushing and buying the Bitcoin. What do you think we're gonna go as far as our monetary policy in the United States?
Well, I do think we are creating a lot of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
People are actually with up and down, obviously, always up and down all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in the long term, humanity is becoming richer. Humanity is becoming wealthier,
Right.
and this will continue. This trend will continue. So it is possible also that now with more machines, more artificial intelligence, we will create so much wealth to be distributed among the people. And in fact, we might not need to work
Right.
or work as we call it today,
Right.
or
Right.
as we do it today. So I think it is possible, and I think it might happen in some way. I don't know in which way because
Right.
these things are changing so fast.
Right. Right.
But yes, we will have enough wealth, enough food, enough shelter, enough energy for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
thanks to technology.
Um, Rob. So you think technology will close in the gap and create new ways of living and we'll probably don't have to work as much as we did in the past because of the exponential technologies that we're going to be producing. I know you heard of Jack Fresco. He talks about this a lot before he died. At 100.
I also met him. By the way,
Oh,
he
wow.
was also an incredible
Yeah.
character.
Yes.
He went to some of the World Future Society
Futures. Yes.
conferences,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and so I met him there at
Yeah.
the World Future Society conference.
Mm.
Well, all the great thinkers, Isaac Asimov,
Mm.
Arthur C. Clarke,
Yeah.
Ray Kurzweil, they were all the speakers at the World Future Society,
Mm.
which I joined
Yes, I
when I
did.
went to MIT on 1980. I
Wow.
actually feel old now. I
Wow.
was at MIT, freshman, a sophomore, 41 years ago. So,
Wow.
and this is when I coincided with Peter Diamandis, but I
Mm.
didn't meet him at the time. We just coincided at MIT.
Wow. So much history. Um, do you think transhumanists are a little bit too well? You actually answered that about the optimistic viewpoint. So I don't even need to go into that again. Um, what was it like teaching at the Singularity University? What type of students? I mean, what did they offer degrees or certificates? Like, what was the structure? What type of students did it? Is it like a further education? Like, if you got your doctorate or something, you could just further it in other studies? How did it? How was it run? I don't know too much about the Singularity University, and I'm sure my viewers don't either.
Yeah, well, it has changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But when it started in 2009, it was basically copied from International Space University, that was also founded by Peter Diamandis. So it began as a summer program with 40 students. On the second year, in 2010, it was increased to 80 students, the double, and one extra week. It went actually from 9 weeks to 10 weeks, and then it stabilized on that. So it was basically summer programs. And then later, corporate programs, executive programs were added for 1 weekend or 1 week or even 2 weeks, and not just in California, in Silicon Valley, but in other parts around the world. There were Singularity conferences, Singularity classes, courses in different parts of the world. However, the world has changed with COVID, and basically there are no classes now. And Singularity University also moved into the entrepreneurial mood. And the idea is that the participants, that no longer are called students, but participants, they try to do some startups or some other entrepreneurial activities. But anyway, we don't know what will happen when there is a new norm or a new normality, when we go back to a different world after COVID-19, because there have been no classes for 2 years, basically, since the summer of 2019. So it might change, but the idea is already spreading. The idea of the singularity, the idea of transhumanism, the idea of immortality. And as you mentioned, immortality is not in the religious or philosophical sense, but more in a scientific sense. However, you can never guarantee immortality, because we might all die tomorrow because of a comet or an asteroid. So we should actually talk about amortality. The letter A, that in Greek means no, like no mortality, no forced mortality. And that is a concept used in biology, really. In fact, there are immortal or immortal cells. This is very important, and let me talk about this before I forget, because this is what cancer cells have discovered. Cancer cells are biologically immortal. What does this mean? This doesn't mean that they cannot die, because if you kill them, they die. But what happens is that cancer cells do not age. They do not age. They discovered how not to age. And this is truly incredible, because cancer cells did not go to MIT. Cancer cells did not go to Harvard or Stanford or Berkeley. However, they discovered how not to age. And this is what scientists are doing now, discovering the mutations that stop molecular cellular aging. And this is a matter of time. I am very happy that very soon, it is hard to say if it is 5, 10, or 20 years, but we will discover it. Why? Because cancer cells know it. They know it. And so also when people tell me that immortality is impossible, I say, how is it impossible? It already exists, and cancer cells are immortal. One more thing, because this is beautiful. I think cancer is probably the most fascinating, one of the most fascinating diseases from a scientific point of view. It's a horrible disease, but scientifically it's very important, because cancer cells are mutations that stop aging process. And this was discovered with a very, very famous case of a person who died in Baltimore, in Maryland. Her name was Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta Lacks was born in 1920, and she died in 1951 at age 1931. She died of cancer. She had a huge cervical cancer. And the doctors in 1951 in Baltimore, they extracted the tumor and they began analyzing. And they discovered that the tumor lived and lived and lived, and it is alive today. It is alive, and it is over 100 years old, but the tumor looks like a teenager. A teenager. Wow. The cells are all young. And this is incredible. This was discovered in 1951. So, since 1951, we know cancer is biologically immortal. But let me tell you even more good news, that not only cancer discovered how to be immortal, but also germ cells. The germ cells, which are the most important because they are for reproduction. Germ cells make sperm, spermatozoids in men, and they also make eggs in women. Germ cells do not age. They can live indefinitely. What happens is when the body dies, the body is made of somatic cells. Somatic cells age. Germ cells do not age. And one more important thing, there are also small animals that we know today that they do not age. They are biologically immortal, like some hydras or the immortal jellyfish. And even more important, bacteria. The first life forms on the planet, bacteria that divide symmetrically, they do not age. They do not age. Life appeared to live. Bacteria that divide symmetrically do not age. Germ cells do not age. Cancer does not age. Immortal jellyfish are immortal. So this is beautiful. Immortality already exists, and we are learning how to do it. That's all. It's just a technical problem.
Right. Thank you for explaining that. And I have the Immortal Life on Henrietta Lacks. I gave it. Well, actually, I don't have it no more. I gave it away. I tend to do that. I have to buy it again. But I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a really important history. And I think Oprah Winfrey did a movie about her, if I'm not mistaken, on her life. But look her up. All the hip hoppers that's listening, and everybody else who's listening, if you don't know about her, please look her up. That's a fascinating story. Thank you for breaking that down, because it makes what we're talking about more realistic. Because when people hearing immortality for the first time, they have other ideas in their head. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. Can you explain to my audience what the singularity is? What the idea of the singularity is, because they might not know of it.
Yes, sure. There are many singularities, which are singular points in time or space. Let me give you 3 examples. A mathematical singularity is to divide by 0, for example. If you divide anything by 0, it is not infinite, it is unknown. No one knows what is to divide by 0. That is a mathematical singularity. There are also physical singularities, like a black hole. No one knows what there is beyond or inside a black hole. It is unknown. And the technological singularity is also the time when artificial intelligence reaches human intelligence, because we don't know what will happen when we have an artificial intelligence equivalent to human intelligence. So that is normally referred as the singularity. When there is so much technology, there is so much artificial intelligence that is almost or equal to humans. The date for that also is from Ray Kurzweil. On his book, The Singularity is Near, in 2005, and before, on his previous book, The Age of Spiritual Machines, from 1998, 1999, he already said that by 2045, we will reach the singularity and also immortality. In fact, they are related. the singularity and immortality are basically related, because once we reach an artificial intelligence equal to human intelligence, we will probably merge with the machine. We will merge with artificial intelligence. We will merge with the technology. Like we are merging with technology. This is part of me that I merge to see. Or our telephone, our technology, all of our technology, we are combining into ourselves, and this will continue more and more. And in 2045, we will be so merged with technology that it will be all one, probably. So that's the technological singularity by the year 2045. And Ray Kurzweil is publishing the continuation of his bestseller, The Singularity is Near, from 2005. And what do you think is going to be called the continuation?
I have no idea. Singularity is nearer?
Yes, it is. It is. The singularity is nearer. And it comes out this summer, this fall in the USA. The singularity is nearer. And two dates again, remember, 2029, when we will reach longevity, escape velocity, or the Methuselarity, the singularity of Methuselah, and also we will pass the Alan Turing test. The Alan Turing test, it's an idea of the British scientist Alan Turing, that eventually we are going to have machines that probably we will confuse when we communicate with them. We will know if they are humans or if they are machines. That will be in 2029, in 9 years from now, 2029. And eventually, artificial intelligence will continue improving. And by 2045, we will reach the technological singularity.
Yes, the Turing test. Wow. Thank you for that. Does Spain? You're located in Spain right now. Are you? What part of Spain are you at right now?
I am in Madrid, in the capital. Actually, my family was originally from Spain, but Spain was a poor country in the 40s, in the 50s, in the 60s. And so my parents emigrated to Venezuela. And now it's just the opposite. Now Venezuela is in a horrible situation. It's very sad, the situation in Venezuela. And I'm living in Madrid, in Spain. But in between, I was in the USA, and I was living in France, and I was living in Japan. I have lived in many countries, actually. I have been in 137 countries.
Wow.
So I am very proud. I love traveling. I love traveling.
That's incredible. You must have plenty of stamps in that passport. That's what you heard. That's amazing. Is there any chronics organization? What is is there any transhumanist organizations in Spain right now? Is it growing? Is this idea growing in Spain?
Yes. Well, I think it is growing all over the world. Remember, this is all exponential, slow, and then fast. So yes, we have actually a lot of people who are interested. Maybe they don't call it transhumanism, but they are aware that technology is changing exponentially and more so. And then I am actually organizing the next Global Transhumanist Summit in Madrid. So all of you are welcome. This will be in October 8, 9, and 10 of this year, 2021, in Madrid. It will be 3 days of conferences with the leading proponents of transhumanism, and you know many of them, Max Moore, Natasha Vita-Moore, Anders Sandberg, also people talking about cryonics like Ben Best, scientists like Joao Pedro de Magallanes, transhumanists like Paul Spiegel, Immortalists like Maria Entrigues, many of the people that you know and that you have interviewed, they will be coming to Madrid. And I hope you are coming to Madrid too.
Yeah, I'm gonna come. I was I'm definitely gonna come because I need to travel a little bit more. I'm just not a I'm not really big on flying, but I told myself I'm gonna have to start flying more. I'm definitely gonna be flying, so you can expect me. I'm gonna come. I have the time to come. I can do it. So yeah,
Fantastic. I think it will be okay to travel after the summer
yeah,
in the Northern Hemisphere.
definitely.
Probably after July, August, it
Yes,
will be safe.
yes,
People will be vaccinated,
yeah,
and we want to have a good conference. 3 days of presentations, and then 2 days of tourism. 2 days to go
nice.
around Madrid to see all the UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
Nice.
You have probably heard about Segovia, Toledo,
Yeah, yeah.
Avila, the Valley of the Fallen,
Valley of the
beautiful
Fallen.
places outside Madrid.
Wow. Yeah.
And also because October 12th is the National Day of Spain. It's like the 4th of July,
Right.
but in Spain, October 12th is the day of the discovery or the rediscovery of the America by the Spanish.
Wow. Great history. I'll definitely will try to make it. I'm definitely gonna book a flight. I should do it soon because before it goes up. Um what are the requirements to get into the singularity to become a participant in the Singularity University? What are some of the requirements if somebody was interested in being a
Well, as I
participant
was
there?
mentioning, there is a transition process,
Right.
but it has changed also throughout the time. But now everything is virtual, so there are only like virtual conferences, virtual lectures. There are no classes. There are no startups being worked on because it's very difficult situation now. But before, obviously, uh, you had to send an application, maybe an interview.
Yeah.
Um, Depending on the program, you could get a scholarship or you had to pay and you had to have a project. So that was the plan, that was the idea.
Sounds
Uh,
wonderful.
no one knows what will happen in the future,
Okay.
but the idea has been popularized, as I mentioned. So that is
Yeah.
the important thing because the singularity maybe now is the plurality.
Yeah. Oh wow. Also, are you still the director of the Millennium Project?
Yes,
Tell us
I
about
am
that.
still with many associations and many groups.
Yes.
The Millennium Project began a quarter of a century ago as the futuristic part of the United Nations University. The American Council of the United Nations University in
Wow.
Washington. It
Yeah.
was a group to think into the future, and then it became independent from the United Nations system, and now it's a global think tank. We have nodes in about 60, 70 countries in the
Wow.
world, and I am director for Venezuela, and also I coordinate activities in Latin America and Spain.
Wow.
And we published every year a book about the future. It's called The State of the
The
Future.
state of the future.
So just Google The State of the Future and you will see the latest of all the research with the projections about humanity in the long term.
Wow. Wonderful. Wow.
I am also with the World Academy of Art and Science. I am a fellow of the
Yes, I've
World
seen that.
Academy, and I am also the vice chair of Humanity Plus,
Wow.
which is the leading transhumanist organization in the world. And it
Yes.
was called before, as you know, until about 10 years ago, the World Transhumanist Association.
Yes.
I was also a director 15 years ago of the World
Wow.
Transhumanist Association, and I
Wow.
organized a conference in Venezuela in
Wow.
2005. And all these people, Natasha, Max, Nick Bostrom,
Big
James
Boston.
Hughes,
Yeah.
Martin Rothblatt, Vina, Rotblat, they all came to Caracas, Venezuela,
Wow.
16 years ago. So I have been a transhumanist for a long, long time, and I
Wow.
am now the vice chair or vice president of Humanity Plus. And Ben Goertzel, who is one of the leading experts in the world in artificial intelligence, is the chair or president. And Natasha Vitamur, she is the executive director now.
Yes. Wow. Well, thank you for all of your work up until this point. You surely have done a lot for transhumanism. That's for sure. Um, this one thing I wanted to touch on. I seen an article on your father, and it's talked about socialism killed your father. Can you elaborate for us a little bit? Um, the Venezuela, was it in Venezuela? And it was under the economic system was socialism at the time.
Yeah, as I mentioned, my parents were born in Spain, but they left Spain when there was a fascist government.
Right.
You know, Spain had 40 years of a fascist dictator,
Yes.
Francisco Franco, and many people left Spain. And my parents went to Venezuela. There was a democratic government at the time when I was born in Caracas. But in 1998, there was the last democratic election, and then it became basically a dictatorship with a socialist communist government. And the situation is very sad in Venezuela for the last few years. So bad that there are 6 million people who have left the country. 6 million of a population of 30 million people. So that is 20% of the population have left Venezuela.
Wow.
It really is a very sad situation. Also because Venezuela was a very rich country, very wealthy country.
Yeah.
That is why my parents went to Venezuela, because it was rich, it was wealthy. And it went from being very wealthy, very rich, to be very poor today because of the communist totalitarian regime,
Right.
first of Hugo Chavez and later Nicolas Maduro. So it is sad because politics can destroy all the progress of humanity, bad
That's
politics.
right.
There is good politics and there is bad
Yeah,
politics.
definitely. That's why I wanted you to mention it. Wow. This was incredible. I definitely would like to have you back on, especially when you get the English version of the book, and I want to discuss more stuff because it's hard to discuss all of the stuff you've done in 1 hour. It's impossible. It's impossible. Anything you would like to say to my audience before we head out, my hip hop audience and other people who are listening? Is any advice you want to give to anybody who wants to learn more about transhumanism and futurism and just wants to do their part and got inspired by listening to you speak today?
Well, many things quickly. First, they need to listen more to you, Lord Maitreya.
Thank
You
you.
are doing a fantastic work to communicate these ideas
Thank
to
you.
many new audiences who need to learn about this message. Also,
Definitely.
with a positive attitude,
Yes.
with optimistic view. Even in the middle of this pandemic, you know, humanity will survive and we will improve. And actually, I think this will be the last pandemic in history because we are learning so much, and medicine and biotechnology is advancing so much that we had a vaccine only in months.
Wow.
Something that before was 10 years, now we had it in 10 months.
Wow.
It really is incredible. So I want to be positive, optimistic, and as Sir Arthur C. Clarke told me, we have to be, because these are self-fulfilling prophecies. Therefore, we need to believe in a better future, to create a better future, to construct a better future. And for that, learn about transhumanism and its 3 pillars: super longevity, super intelligence, and super happiness. And come to Madrid to the next global summit in October 8, 9, 10 for the conference. and October 11, 12 for the UNESCO tour visits and learn a lot more, and how also you might become immortal because this is moving very fast, very fast. Rejuvenation technologies are moving exponentially, and my forecast also, like Ray Kurzweil says, that in 10 years we will reach longevity, escape velocity, but also probably longevity will become the largest industry. The rejuvenation technology, the largest industry, because everybody, everybody wants to live, everybody wants to be healthy. Everybody wants to be in good health. So this will probably be the biggest industry in the world in 1 to 2 decades. And this is good.
Yes, this is good. I'm glad you said that. You hear that, hip hoppers? This is the wave. I'm Lord Maitreya, Dr. Jose Cordeiro from Spain, and we're out. Peace and love, everyone.
Live long and prosper, my friend.